assessment for me is listening, it's noticing, it's documenting, and as we move forward, it's looking at student samples of their work.
I think assessment cannot be thought about as separate from instruction. So in so many ways, I think when we're planning our instruction, it starts with our assessing and knowing, getting to know our learners, getting to know where they are, what are reasonable goals for them in relation to the curriculum. And I think as we're doing the instruction, we're constantly assessing to make decisions about what our next move may be. When I think about assessment and instruction, they come together. I think there is also the piece around not only assessment informing instruction, but also the piece around after, how did my instruction work? And so those moments when you're instructing and you're observing and you're listening and you're making those decisions, that's part of it as well. So I think it happens all the time in addition to those events, right? I think they have to happen all together.
We want to be able to capture in a way that doesn't necessarily lend itself to a product. So we want to think about what we're noticing. Like as a teacher, I'm always looking for those informal opportunities to gather evidence about what I'm seeing and what those kids are developing. So thinking about conferencing with kids, having that opportunity to sit down with them one-on-one, ask them what they can do, me noticing what they are bringing to the table, and having that opportunity to give them that direct feedback on the spot. I think about the different observations I can make. If I'm taking pictures, often I would take video or capture that learning in process and be able to reflect it back to the kids, ask them what they noticed about it, and then be able to share my perspectives or interpretations of it.
I think when we are talking about literacy assessment, we need to think about that triangulation of evidence, especially in our primary classrooms where we want so much of the learning to be through play. So we need to be thinking about how are we collecting assessment information from our students about what they know and what they understand and what they can do when we're making observations, when we're having conversations with students, through the things that they're producing when they're doing storytelling or writing, when we're sitting side by side reading with a student or side by side talking about their writing. And so we have to keep in mind that there's lots of different ways for us to gather that assessment information. It's not just a product, but all the times when we're observing students playing and working and learning together, we can get a sense of what they're able to do. Can they make a prediction? What letters do they know and understand? What words can they write? How are they applying some of the skills that we've been teaching to the things that they're doing in their learning and their play?
No.
After you've gathered some of that information and that documentation, it allows you then to see maybe as a whole class where some things that you need to focus on that you want to address with your whole group, or it also allows you to see with particular students, maybe there's a certain skill that you want to focus on, and so you can work with that group of students, or maybe one-on-one if there's a student that is needing some more support with their literacy learning. So I think it just helps you in your planning and helps you to see where your kids are, what they know, and then allows you to help them move forward in their learning.
We need to have ways that we're documenting that for ourselves, that pedagogical narration where we're kind of finding ways to document the learning that's happening so that then we can go back in collaboration with the other people in our classroom team, whether that's our educational assistants, our resource teachers, and we can start thinking about, okay, what are we seeing that the students are doing really well? What are we noticing? What are some areas that we might need to work on? And then we can start making plans to kind of continue to nudge and shift our students down the path that we're trying to go on to help them grow as readers and writers.
Literacy instruction is dynamic. It's active, it's engaged, it's responsive, and it's contextually rooted. I often think of who the learner is, where they are coming from, who they are, what assets they bring with them, what strengths they bring with them, and then build from there. So to me, often instruction feels like bringing everybody in circle, understanding and learning from who they are, offering perhaps texts, so that could be books, that could be music, that could be an activity, that could be multimodal, multilingual texts that speak to interests that I know they bring with them. Do that as a whole class. Break out into small group work where they are engaging perhaps in their own collaborative projects based off of this larger work that we just shared. And then that would be time for me as a teacher to be able to weave in and out, recognize strengths, celebrate learning, recognize where further instruction might be needed, where supports might be needed, and then offer time for one-on-one connection. Who are you, beautiful person? And how can I support you to be that shining, beautiful self that I know you are?
I also really strive to activate students' prior knowledge. What do you notice about this? What do you think is going on here? If I get them talking and sharing what they already know and think, then they're activating their prior knowledge, and then everything that comes, they can make connections between what they already know or wonder to new knowledge and language and ideas that are coming. And so rather than thinking about students as an empty vessel to fill with language, we start from the ideas and the language and the questions and the wonderings that are there, and then it's like Velcro. We attach new language and words and offer opportunities for students to play with those ideas.
So for this particular group, they were very interested in insects. So I had ordered some praying mantis to come into our classroom, and the egg casing took about 6 weeks until they hatched, but just as you can see, they each were writing down all their wonders, all the questions that they wanted to find out, and then that is such a great starting point for our study and for literacy, because they are so engaged. It's their questions, and then we can go from there and research and read and learn about the different things that they're interested in. We made flip books. So instead of them exploring their own individual questions, I sort of gathered all the questions and found the commonalities between them. And then we worked on a question together as a class in their flip book. So we would write the question and then flip up the page, and we would kind of explore that together, whether that was through reading a text or showing a video and discussing it and kind of providing them with some of that knowledge, which then they could go and show their learning in their book in all sorts of different ways. With the drawing, some kids are labeling, others are doing quite a bit of writing, including fact boxes about things that they had learned. Then working with them together, teaching them about how to read nonfiction text, how to find information, and then how to communicate and share what they've learned.
So as you read the poem, you're noticing rhymes, you're finding words with a syllable, or you're tying it into the spelling that you're doing. If we're doing ing words, where are those ing words in there? And I think kids through that, and it's a daily routine, grow a lot more and understand a lot more with those phonemic, phonological awareness skills. To scaffold language use, we look at different phonic aspects. So we look at blends, we look at digraphs, short vowels, long vowels, and how to make them. And when we focus on one, like digraphs, let's say SH makes a sound, we look through literature, can we find that sound so they can see it? But we also practice making words and combining letters and making words with that digraph and that sound.
What is important is that we want kids to learn to love, to want to pick up a book, to want to write, to want to communicate. And so to me, what the most important thing is really getting to know our kids and really get to know their gifts and what they bring and the experiences they bring forward, so they can see themselves reflected in the work that they do. They feel like they have that voice and they have that agency, because even though it is primary, I don't believe that they don't want that. They want that opportunity to see themselves in the world. And so I think in primary, having an opportunity to bring in those experiences, bringing that literature to reflect that back to them is key in helping them continue to develop as the people they are. Also, the most important thing is integrating joy, bringing in joyful experiences and moments where kids can get excited about picking up a book and get excited about writing down their ideas and sharing with others.
And so that funds of knowledge piece to me is so important, especially when we're thinking about multilingual learners, especially when we're thinking of newcomers into classroom spaces, when we're thinking about learners who bring vast fields of experiences that we might know nothing about, because we are one blip within the whole range of their experiential ways of being in the world. And what majestic stories become possible when we open doors to include all of those experiences within our classroom spaces, when we include all of those languages within our classroom spaces, when we move in circle rather than stand in the center as educators, and when we move in circle, we offer also a beautiful collaborative way of being in classrooms. So children can support each other, they can support us to be better instructors and educators, and importantly, to reconceptualize and decolonize what's happening within classrooms and reconsider what normative practices look like, what dominant language practices look like, what dominant understandings of what school feels like, and broaden conceptions towards being more culturally sustaining. And so what we then offer is this threaded, woven together funds of knowledge that build collectively within the classroom space towards culturally sustaining spaces, towards responsive spaces, towards contextually rich learning spaces.
But it's also important to have opportunities to apply that knowledge in really personalized ways. And when kids get to synthesize or transform something, or they're taking what we've been learning about and using it in some way, then they own it more, they will hold it more, and it'll actually move into short-term memory. And the more times we play with that language and those understandings, it moves into long-term memory. And so we're building our filing cabinets of knowledge by grouping things and putting them together. And so for me, instruction has that activating or connecting phase, some kind of processing phase that's guided and scaffolded, and then some kind of personalizing or transforming phase where kids do something with what we've been using. There's lots of support from me and hopefully other adults that are around, but in the end, it's really this empowering approach.
They don't learn to write without picking up their own pencil and drawing and labeling and adding letters and numbers and squiggles to the work they're doing, because that's the beginning of communication. They write with purpose, and we grow that piece because that's meaningful. So we don't look at it and think, you shouldn't really be doing this until you know enough sound symbol to get the words down right. We give them a piece of paper and say, what do you want to say? What's your story? What's your message? What's your shopping list? What do you want to record from what's happened today? What do you want to take from Story Workshop and create over here and grow from that? So it really is pretty simple. Words and meaning, and how do they work in concert? Building from the kids, their strengths, their interests, their collaboration. Literacy isn't devoid of a social context. It isn't devoid of a cultural context. It isn't devoid of the place where kids live and learn and work and play, and we have to really use those pieces.